welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And today we are doing one of our special standalone recap episodes. Normally we combine them into a bunch, but I had such a good feeling about this movie, and I was just pretty sure that I was going to really enjoy it. So I thought, let's do a standalone recap of Lights Camera Christmas. And it's been really fun because it turns out we ended up having John Brotherton on the podcast, and then we had the writer Gary Goldstein on. So we've been talking about it a lot, and luckily I did enjoy it. So it was a good bet on my part. But of course, I wanted to have my friend Marisa Serafini on with me to talk about this movie. You live in LA, you know this whole scene that this movie is satirizing, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah, hello Rachel. Once again, yes, I'm glad that you asked me to do this one because I love the whole meta-ness of a movie about a movie, and it's totally up my alley. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We'll get into it,
Ah,
and it's Christmas time again. Here we are.
yeah. Well, how have you been doing? I'm trying to remember when we last had you on. It was, I think, sometime this. When was the last time that we had? It was sometime this
It's
summer.
right. It's hard to remember because we actually saw each
Oh,
other for in person over the
yes,
summer.
a couple times. No, it was for
Yeah,
Father of the Bride. That's when we had you on.
that's
The
right.
last,
We've done
yeah.
so many movies now.
Which
The
was
new one,
really
yeah,
fun.
the new Father of the Bride, which I think we both, for the most part, enjoyed.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's underrated for the year. I really had a good time with it. But yeah, we'll put a link down if any of you missed that episode. We had a lot of fun talking about the latest Father of the Bride. But how have you been doing? You having a good fall?
Yes. It's been a crazy whirlwind of a few months because I just moved, and so it's been like a big life transition, as you know one does when they're
Mm.
moving. So a lot of things have happened since I last actually saw you in person. But it's a good fall. It finally got down to what I would quote fall season here in LA because
Yeah.
now, or people joke, sweater weather. It's in the 40s now in the morning,
Yeah.
so it's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
it's definitely feeling like fall.
Yeah, you get a couple weeks of it there and
Yeah, and that's it.
in
It's
the
just a tease
Southern
here in
California.
LA.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like you're the perfect person to talk about this movie with because the not only do you go to film school, but you are in production all
Mhm.
the time, every day in your life,
Yes.
and projects, mostly television, right?
Yes, mostly television. I've done a few short films here and there, but
Hmm.
it's all relative.
Yeah.
I
So
just did
you,
a live production on Friday, so yes.
yeah. So you get like things like the whole scene with the craft services and just some of these scenes that they had in this movie.
Oh, do I ever? People don't understand how great crafty is, how
Yeah.
terrible it is for your diet, but how great it is to keep you alive during production.
Yeah. Yeah, we one of my favorite interviews we ever did was a with an actress named Donna Benedicto, and she talked all about for probably 25 minutes about craft services, and we just died laughing. It was really funny.
Yep, yep. I still to this day, and I've worked on a lot of credibility, credible shows.
Uh-huh.
American Idol still has the best crafty.
Oh, I was gonna ask
Yes.
which was the best.
Yeah, American Idol. Because not to sound like a complete LA person, and sound so Hollywood right now, because it did also work on So You Think You Can Dance. But the
Uh-huh.
crafty is more like health based kind of snacks for the dancers. So it's
Oh
not like
yeah.
the crap sugary snacks that you just want to like binge on a Reese's, it's more like keto and
Yeah.
carrot chips and stuff like that, and you don't want that. So no, American Idol went full out. It was great.
Yeah. You have a whole new respect for Hollywood actresses and actors and their incredible bodies when you see what's tempting them all the time.
Oh, I know, and I had to at once. I was at a point where I had to put actual food in people's trailers, so I know what they ate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we should just say so we should read the summary for this. So, Lights, Camera, Christmas. This was on the 5th. There's Kimberly Sested and John Brotherton, director David Weaver, written by Gary Goldstein. And I mean, it's just that's kind of wild for me because we have literally interviewed every single one of those people. I love
Well,
them
I love
all. They're
Kimberly. Yeah,
amazing.
I love Kimberly, so I had
Yeah,
high hopes
yeah.
for her in this one.
Yes, me too. As when a holiday rom-com movie shooting in her hometown needs a costume designer, Carrie, a local shop owner, steps into the role. While working on the movie, she rediscovers her passion for costume design and finds herself falling for Brad, the film's famous leading man. So, how did you feel like they pulled off this sort of movie within a movie, but also sort of a little bit satire of movie industry, of Hallmark movies, of Christmas movies, all that thing? Do you think they got that balance right?
I think they did because I liked the format of this particular one because I think I've said it before, but maybe on other shows, I don't know. Uh I've talked about this a lot just in my
Uh-huh.
personal life is that I love the nonlinear story structure. So when you go back and forth and when
Yeah.
there's like two different storylines going on at the same time, but eventually it all lines up within the storytelling aspect. I liked it, and they were jumping back and forth, and with the whole press conference on
Yeah.
the stage, and then actually kind of like a flashback. The whole production itself is a major flashback, which I
Yeah.
actually enjoyed, and I wasn't expecting that
Yeah.
because yeah, I was kind of expecting just the filming and the production and then leading to the end like it completely linear, and that was a nice surprise, and I think it did well because it brought us out of the moments and it brought us back into the moment. So there was that balance of what was happening. We know how it kind of ended, but we had to see how it ended, so I like that.
Yeah, the structure was really smart. It definitely added to the feeling of sort of meta ness of it all. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you've attended a premiere or film festival, you know what it's like to be a part of those panels. And I felt like they captured it pretty well. And it was a nice way to sort of give out exposition seamlessly through this setup that they had.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's smart because from when I think that's their self-awareness that they really catered to us. Like, yes, we know exactly how it's going, and it still felt, yeah, I still felt the, beginning, middle, and end type of, acts within the film.
Yeah.
That it really worked. I liked it.
I think so too. I mean, they had a lot to cover in a short period of time with with this movie, but I think for the most part they got that balance right. I mean, they could have leaned into the comedy even more, I think. Like the for instance, they could have had the movie shooting in summer, which is what uh
Yeah.
which is what these movies do. And it would have been really funny to have had like all of the cameramen and everybody like in shorts and t-shirts. And then you've got the especially with those like big parkas in that scene that was very funny. I think it would have even added to it even more if they were like roasting and hot.
Right. And the actors pretending like they're actually
Yeah.
cold because we've seen a lot of that. But I did love again with the self-awareness that when we got the what you would say the typical snowball fight and it
Hmm.
ended up not being real snow. I loved how they
Yeah.
pointed
That
that
was
out. They're
funny.
like, "Oh, that could have been such a great moment, but it got ruined because of the realness of what snow actually is when it
Yeah.
comes to filmmaking." I
Yeah.
love that. I
That was
love that.
that was a good scene. I think that in some ways it was more Hallmark kind of satirizing and commenting on old Hallmark more than current Hallmark. Because I mean, they just don't make Santa movies anymore. I mean, there hasn't been a movie with a like leading role Santa in so long. I
Right.
mean, we might have like a little wink. They had this sequel to Christmas Under Wraps, which of course has a Santa in it, but it's all sort of a little bit sort of subtle. Uh,
Mhm.
but I mean, I can't think of it has been, I mean, since the North Pole movies that they've had like Santa as a character in one of their
Right.
movies. So I
And I
really
think, oh, sorry, not to
no, I
cut you
was just
off.
gonna say, I just really feel like it was almost more Hallmark looking back at themselves more than them kind of more than anything else.
Right. And I'm like, I'm glad you brought that up because now that I think about it, I can't really think of Santa being the, you know, pivotal role in that sense either because Hallmark movies are more about the relationships. And if
Yeah.
we do see Santa, we see him in a very secondary way where he kind of injects himself in, he helps the couple, or he adds his like 2 cents to the storyline, but it's not really about him. I think the
Mhm.
last one I can more think off of the top of my head is now it's like Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a feature for if you're talking about features, but there's ones like
Right.
Matchmaker Santa. I mean, these are all sort of like the old school, like 2014 to 2016 Hallmark. You have that one with Alicia Witt where she's like the female Santa at the
Mm,
stores
right.
pretending. There's that one. And also the one where this with her where the Santa makes her she can't lie.
Oh,
Um,
right.
uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, but again, you're going back to that sort of 2014, 2016. So
What's
I
that
thought that was interesting.
Annie? Or am I thinking of the Annie Santa
Oh
one?
yeah, Annie Claus.
Annie Claus, yeah.
And I think that
I think
was around like
yeah,
2013 to 14, something like that.
yeah, and I think that
Um,
that storyline, if I remember correctly, had a lot to do about Santa,
oh
but
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
She's
being a
Santa's
woman,
daughter.
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I laughed at I laughed at all of the Christmas movie names. I loved Laura Soltis in this movie playing Kimberly Sessions' mom. I always love her.
Hmm.
She's so good. And in this one, her being this like fangirl was really fun. And you haven't seen the Christmas clock? Hello Christmas, Chattanooga Christmas. There's no Christmas like Snow
It's
Christmas.
like Snow Christmas. I'm like, oh yeah. Again with the
That was very
them
funny.
making fun of themselves because I was like, oh yeah, the Hallmark creators they've done so many movies now. How
Yeah.
do they come up with original Christmas titles?
Well, a lot of times the titles don't have anything to do with the movie. Like in that one where it's you think that one where she can't lie anymore. Um is you think it would be called like the Christmas liar or whatever, but it's called I'm Not Ready for Christmas, which makes no sense. Like it has nothing
Right.
to do with the movie except for she had that song that went with it. So that's often the case where you're just like, why is this called this? It doesn't but and a lot of times the in progress names will be way better than the name that ends up if you're following the project along.
Yep.
You're like, oh, you totally made it bland. It was a way better title before.
Yep. Yep. I completely agree.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. From the hosts of the podcast Home for Hallmark, Molly and Brad now bring readers their debut novel, If Only Christmas Would Come. An instant Amazon bestseller, If Only Christmas Would Come transports readers back to Prince Edward Island during the era of Anne of Green Gables and features a strong-headed, cranberry farming, jeans wearing heroine and a playboy with a family secret. Reviewers agree this book is a fluffy, steamy, predictable Hallmark movie masterpiece. If Only Christmas Would Come is available on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble now. Visit at Home for Hallmark for more info. That's at Home for Hallmark, and you can use our affiliate link in the description below. But I talked to Gary Goldstein, the writer, and he said that it was challenged to find for this list of fake movies to find titles that had not actually been used, which
Mm,
totally makes sense.
yeah.
I think that's funny.
Well, I think Lights Camera Christmas definitely works for the film making aspect of a Christmas movie. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
liked
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good title. Very good
Very
title.
apropos.
Yeah. I also liked the fact that so they start her out with this blue dress and she looked beautiful for Kimberly for Carrie the character. And a lot of times when they're playing like designers, you're just like ugh, the fashion isn't quite good enough, you know? Like it
Hmm.
looks a little on the cheap. But I thought she looked stunning in that dress and I thought it looked to me it looked Hollywoodish.
Yeah, I did like her fashion, and I loved
Yeah.
how she reflected what her fashion is. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times I've seen out here is that you have someone who makes like this high end luxury fashion, and then you see the actual designer, and they look nothing like their pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and like they don't decide to dress themselves up in what they put out into the world. So I liked that her outfit actually really reflected her character throughout the movie and was
Yeah.
pretty consistent throughout for matching her personality.
I agree. And I think the casting was very strong. I already mentioned Lars Soltis, but John Brotherton was absolutely hilarious in this movie. I thought that he nailed it, like just the perfect tone when he needed to be a little bit more serious. He was very sincere and sweet, but like when he was just sort of this arrogant movie star, he was so funny. I thought he was just perfect in this role.
Right. I thought he did a great job of being pretty full of himself.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh no, he's gonna be one of these guys. And I had to like roll my eyes a bit, but I was like, all right, the higher you are, the bigger you're gonna fall, or at least he had a more room to grow, and he had that. And I was like, okay, I have to watch him because personally, I was kind of turned off by him at first, but then I was like, I know he's gonna eventually grow on me. We got to watch
Yeah.
him. And then I liked how he started becoming more real throughout. It was like once he got put in his place a couple times here and
Yeah.
there. He's like, okay, he's actually someone that you can get along with.
Yeah. I mean, he was rude and conceited, of course, but he did it in kind of a funny way, in my opinion. I was laughing at just how over the top he was, and especially when he gets on that the new Santa suit and he comes out of his
Oh,
trailer
right.
and he's just like, yeah.
You know, like, and I loved how they put him in this big inflatable kind of suit, which
That was
kind
so
of humbled him a
ridiculous.
bit, but it seemed like he thoroughly enjoyed it. He's
Hmm.
like, yeah, we know this is ridiculous. Let's just have fun with it. And then
Hmm.
I loved with the switching of the outfit to that suave, debonair kind of suit. I was like,
Yeah.
hello. All right, I see you. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
it. All
Yes.
right. I'm on board.
Yeah. And I think Kimberly Sested, I think that she is so good at the moments where she needs to be really sincere, when like she's trying to hold back the tears, and she plays that, whether it's Nine Lives of Christmas or this or any of her other roles. She plays that, I think, so well. And she can also do the comedy, but I think it's especially that like emotional sincerity that makes her such a compelling actress on screen.
I completely agree. I loved the scene where she's going through her portfolio from school because
Hmm.
being an art student, I had to have my own portfolio. So I
Yeah.
know the pain of making that and then going through your work and not just being that creative. Like, I completely understood that feeling that like your work is never good enough or it's not good enough when you compare it to other people, and then you that in itself creates that self-doubt and that you're not good enough for your art and all the work that you do, even though it's your
Yeah.
passion, and it hinders you in your life and your decisions of like, maybe I could have done this had I had more confidence. And I completely understood that, and I
Hmm.
felt that just as an art person myself. I was like, oh yes, all right, this movie, I
Hmm.
got you. Kimberly Sestad, amazing, all the feels.
Yeah.
I completely understood her character, and that's why I respected just the character of Carrie so much throughout this because I know
Yeah.
what that feels like.
Yeah, because she'd had real failures where she had let herself down. So she was a very vulnerable character. She'd given up.
Right, it was
Hmm. Yeah.
so realistic, and just as a creative person, I'm like, oh, that feeling never goes away. You
Hmm.
get through your art blocks and you get through your um those barriers, but eventually it does eventually creep back here and there. And as the creative, you have to just keep pushing through those art blocks
Yeah.
and that negativity and self-doubt, but like that feeling never goes away, and she portrayed that so well.
Hmm. I also loved the whole running joke of Jill and Caleb being exes and their interpreter, Jamie. That was so funny.
Oh my God, I love that so much too. And because that is sometimes realistic. You have to, and it's so crazy that they portray that so well. It's like,
Yeah.
can you tell this person that I don't like this? I'm like, oh my God, they're right there. Um, I think that was great, but that was another side story that I wasn't expecting, and I enjoyed it so much.
Hmm. It was hilarious. And I thought the girl who played Jamie was really funny. She like I feel like every beleaguered assistant in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood will be like, yeah, I get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd be amazed what production will pay for someone just to do like the small little work like that.
Yeah.
And it's so underappreciated and it's a thankless job, but someone has to do it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I thought there were a lot of funny lines, like when he's when the first time that he goes over to her house, and he's like, "Don't worry, mothers love me." Like,
Yeah.
uh, and I think the key scene for them kind of turning the corner as far as him like humanizing him was him playing the piano and them singing carols.
Yeah.
You know,
I,
that
yeah, and there was a moment where you're like, okay, he's not an actor anymore. He's just being
yeah, yeah,
himself. And that's where like she kind of sees, because sometimes when you finally see people out of their workplace, out of their element, and you just see them being themselves, you're like, okay, it's a completely different light, and you see a whole different side of them. And I think that's what she was starting to see and enjoy.
yeah. I mean, and obviously, this you have to take anything like this with a huge grain of salt. Like, obviously, they would make a contract with her. If they they wouldn't just go back and forth as far as the clothes they purchase and things like that. That would all be in contracts and stuff. And some of the other stuff, again, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But it's meant
Right.
to be kind of a farce, so it's supposed to be fun.
Right, and I absolutely understand that too,
Yeah.
because especially with production and just budget, because producers are all about the budget. Are we coming in
Yeah.
on budget? Are we over budget? X, Y, Z. Especially the whole idea they had to buy out the entire store is like that's not realistic. But
Mm,
I understand they're in a desperate spot. They needed clothes immediately, so they just bought everything.
yeah.
What's their whole return policy? That made me laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, again with that would be all written out and they would have a
Hmm.
specific budget of how much they can spend and what they can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I understand the whole immediacy is like we need a designer now.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so funny when they're like, the customer took a gig on new Matt Damon movie, 3 months in Spain.
Like, yep, that happens too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I was a little bit lost on the timeline though. I was because they have this town meeting for the lighting the Christmas tree, but they were like, that's early. So was this all happening in like I think it was happening in like November, I guess.
I mean, yeah, it
It
had
was a
to have been
little
soon because
confusing.
it was still sunny out, but it seemed like it was fall-ish
Hmm.
time. But also currently working in government, we just had a bunch of council meetings. To sound completely Hollywood meta, we legit had council meetings about shutting down specific roads so we can film the Beverly Hills Cop new movie for
Oh.
Netflix. And that was just a month ago, and it's November now, so like it usually these type of um meetings that cover all of that is usually right before it's supposed to happen.
Hmm.
So I'd imagine it was soon.
Ho, ho, ho! We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
their banter, I think, between the two of them was really fun. I mean, like when she says, "You're Brad Baxter. Why do you care what I think?" And he's like, "Because you seem cool, and I want you to like me."
Which
That was
was
good.
nice because a lot of times, I mean, not to sound terrible, but like some there are some actors that are genuine like that, but there are some actors like, no, you're here to do a job. I don't care about
Sure.
your opinion. You're just here to do what I want. But for him to take that moment to actually like respect what she had to say,
Hmm.
I was like, okay, he actually can be a person you could collaborate
Yeah.
with creatively.
Well, it does. It helps you endear you to to him. Plus, it just starts those sort of enemies to lover sparks,
Right.
I think. And then this is when we get the red Santa suit. It's like a suit coat suit, not a traditional Santa suit, because evidently the network, which is called Dazzle, on this on this one, that she makes him the this long, it's like almost like a tuxedo,
Hmm.
but red. What do you think of that? Did you like
Very
that?
modern, hip, and chic. Oh, I loved it. I was like,
Yeah.
how did I never ever think about like a modernized Santa suit? Because when you think of Santa, we think a very specific look and what the coat and jacket looks like and whatnot. And then to see a completely new version, you're like, all right, we're definitely in the 21st century. I
Mhm.
like it in a good way. In a
Yeah.
good way.
It was fun. It was I don't really love long suit coats unless it's like a period piece. If it's supposed to be in, the 1860s or something like that. I don't love long suit coats, but it
Mhm.
looked, I think that did help it feel more this combination of old and new, having to be a long suit coat. But
Yeah.
I liked his leading lady in the movie, in the fake movie. Her name is Mariah, and and she was a good character, I thought.
I liked her. I
Yeah.
I was I had to look it up. Veronica Long. I was like, give her a Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
Make
She
her
was,
leading lady. I would totally watch it. I liked her,
yeah.
her personality. I like that friendship that they had with co-stars to co-stars, and not once, yeah, and she's a beautiful woman, and not once did I ever thought she was going to be a problem as in that
Yes.
triangular aspect. Like I never felt threatened by her in that way. Like I liked her around.
Yeah. She was
And I
good.
was just, yeah, at the end, I was like, give her a movie. I want to see
Yeah.
her in a Hallmark, in another leading Hallmark movie.
Yeah, she was good. I liked when she is like, I see the way you look at her. Like that was
Mm,
fun. It was fun.
yeah, you
I
just egg him on a bit.
would you want to watch My Favorite Santa if it was
Yes. Yes, because when we saw those scenes when they were filming, like the director, I wanted to yell at the director. I was like, "No, let the moment breathe a little bit before you yell cut." I was like, "That was too soon."
Yeah.
Yeah, just as the curiosity, you kind of want to see the end product of what
Hmm.
all this was for. So if they
Good.
had that side movie, absolutely.
Well, especially if there's a My Favorite Santa number
Two.
two. I mean, that even makes it more appealing. And like I said, they don't do Santa movies on Hallmark hardly ever. And when for in the My Cozy Christmas Inn, which was a kind of spiritual sequel to Christmas Under Wraps,
Hmm.
with that one, they had Santa and the reindeer and the moon and everything. Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas,
Yeah.
that whole thing. They had that at the end, and I'm not kidding. Like I felt a little misty eyed when I saw that. Like I was like, oh, so fun, because we just don't get it anymore. And so if they did a full on out My Favorite Santa, I would die. I would be so
Yeah.
happy.
I'd be right there with you. I was like, I want
Yeah.
to see it because it looked like an actually genuinely good, cute Christmas movie that I would want to see.
Yes. Yes. And and then we also have, yeah, they're talking about this. All felt very old school Hallmark in the scene that they're shooting, where she says, when you have the right person on your side, anything is possible. And then you get this whole thing with Jill saying she wrote it when they were on the good side of their marriage, and the words were based on us. And so Jill and Caleb like have this moment, and because basically they were like this power couple in Christmas movies. And it's like Tippy and Neil Dabrowski or somebody like that, like
Yep.
this power couple. And then so they made like 20 movies together, and then things got rough and rough and rough in their marriage. They ended up getting divorced, but they still had this old script for My Favorite Santa. So they ended up getting put on it together again. And so that was kind of there. You could almost have a whole movie just about them.
I know. I was like
Mhm.
that. See, that was a whole nother story that I wasn't expecting, but I thoroughly enjoyed because
Yeah.
that's also realistic too. Because so many times scripts get shelved or
Mhm.
scrapped or get rewritten, but the
Yeah.
bones and the original emotions are still there, or the meanings behind it. So to
Mhm.
have this original story come back to them, I love that. I was like,
Yes.
that's very realistic to Hollywood.
I also felt like there were parts of this movie where kind of wondered if Hallmark was trolling people a little bit, particularly the like gratuitous glamour shots of the Balsam Hill. I was
Oh
like,
yeah. I was
just
like,
that
oh,
it was
product
so over
placement.
the top that I was like, I think like mildly trolling their own sponsor.
Yeah,
That was really
I
funny.
saw that. I was like, yep, product placement, product placement.
Like it was very over the top, I thought.
And yeah, and there was that, and then his signature move of breaking the fourth wall and winking at the camera. And
Hmm.
then we got that at the very end. I was like, oh, okay. Again, making fun of themselves. Like it, see it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also thought they did a great job of kind of paying homage to classic Hollywood. You know, you've got this whole thing where he imitates Jimmy Stewart, which was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Wonderful Life and everything. And they talk about making a remake of it, and there's like, no,
You're like, no, don't.
horrified.
Leave it be. It's classic in and of itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did like that because they had to point out that movie because everyone does. But
Hmm.
when he's quoting it, it is the most overused, overquoted line from that
Hmm.
movie. It's like there are other good lines in that movie if you actually watch it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she ends up applying to this design. It's like a fellowship or internship or something like that in New York.
Assistant director
Yeah,
position, I believe.
yeah, and for design, and she applies, and she kind of does it on a whim. She doesn't think she's going to get it. But how did you like that whole plot line with her, where she ends up giving up the job opportunity because she thinks she has an opportunity to work with him? How do you think they managed all of that?
Yeah, it was a little messy, but also
It
very
is.
realistic. Because I, admittedly, I have done that. I have accepted a job thinking I was going to have it, and it
Mhm.
completely went away within it like 2 days. I was like, well, I also turned down this other opportunity because I thought I was going to work with you guys. So I absolutely understand
Yeah.
that. And that's the thing with Hollywood or just like working in general. Like you have to have a lot of you're juggling a lot of plates.
Yeah.
And so I understood that. I wish she would have discussed it a little bit more with him,
Hmm.
like as a person in the industry is like, what are all the details that like if I agree to work with you, who do I have to talk to? Where am I going? When does it start? There are so many details before taking on a project like that, and she didn't do that. But I think gotta chalk that up to her greenness of working in films
Hmm.
because she's never done it before. So that was very realistic that she wouldn't know to think of those things.
Yeah.
But I love again going back to her going over the portfolio and everyone's telling her is like, no, you're so much better than you think you are. And then she finally got that spark within her again, like, yeah, let me just put myself back out there, let me
Hmm.
try. And her applying showed us that moment that she's ready to try again. And I
Yeah.
liked that just to get it kind of deflated a little bit. There were a lot of realistic moments, but I think I don't know,
Well,
maybe it's that experience. It's like if you're agreeing to something, you would ask more details
yeah.
to it.
I think that's true, but it made for a really nice finale. of him saying how sorry he was and everything like that. And but yeah, in reality, like, you definitely would have a contract and other things
Mhm.
that and sometimes those can even go up in flames, but you would have more before you would give up an opportunity. I think you'd probably say, can I get back to you, have a weekend or something like that. But
Right.
nevertheless, it provided, you need some conflict for these stories. And so it provided some conflict. And again, she's so good at those like sincere, I'm just about to cry, I'm trying to hold it in. Like, she nails that scene. So if anybody's working with Kimberly Such, you want as many of those scenes as you can have, because she is so good at it, I think.
Yeah, make you feel like, oh, yep, girl, I just want to hug you because I've been there. I know
Yes.
what it feels like. Yeah, she's so good.
Yeah. So then they go back to the premiere and they're saying, one of the questions is, were there any on-set romances? And that's when they have their little date where he gets her pizza from New York, and then they have like a pretty good conversation, and this is all on the set.
Hmm.
And then they dance and have a pretty swoon-worthy kiss, I thought.
Yeah, yeah, I liked that because you always wonder, and like sometimes you do hear about the behind the scenes romance drama of films. Like I can name one in particular very recently, but I don't want to date us right now. But yes, and I like that because that's also very realistic because feelings do bubble up on set, and that the whole eating on the actual set, that's realistic too. If there's a table
Mhm.
and the scene's not hot, yeah, sometimes you can just sit down and eat. But I mean, it depends on the production
Yeah.
designer as well. But I did like it because they finally, once the cameras weren't rolling, they got to be themselves,
Yeah.
and you can slowly see the chemistry like between these two. It's like, yeah, I believe it. These two could be a thing.
Yeah. Well, and we find out that he had given up being a part of this indie darling. Kind of, it sounded like it was almost sort of like Coda or a movie like that, that's an indie and then it blows up and becomes this big thing.
Yeah.
So he'd given up Sunrise Highway. And she's like, you could have been in that.
Yep.
Uh, and he has this new chance to be in this edgy thriller called Ryan's Game.
Yeah. I was like, is that like Jack Ryan or
Yeah.
and I was like, all right, I see you. The sounds like it could go on like Amazon Prime or something.
Yeah, it really did.
Yeah, I like that because you immediately knew what kind of genre that was. For like, I loved how they established that Brad, his whole career is like Hallmark movies. He's the leading Hallmark hunky man, and then to him to do a complete departure. That is a big risk when actors get so, not, I don't want to say stuck, but they get so used to the type of movies that they are, and to do something completely different that changes their career. Yeah, that's a big step. That's a big change. That's a big change to their image and how do people see them.
Mhm.
And that realistic moment where like, is he ruining his career? And then that showed his self-doubt and that shook his confidence a bit. So not everyone gets that.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
Yeah, because there's the article saying is Brad Baxter giving up his nice guy routine? That's what makes him scared.
Yeah.
And then he invites her to go to, once he accepts the role, first they have the whole fake snow scene, like you mentioned, which was really fun, very charming. That was cute.
Well, they did get to make snow angels.
Yes, they got to make snow angels. And so then he agrees to do the movie, and she tells him that she talks about her father passing away, and that you can't live with regrets. That uh, and so then that helps him with the with one of the scenes in the movie. I talk about regret, and that kind of makes him think. And so he decides to take the role at first, and then, like you said, there's that tabloid article, and so then he gets nervous.
Yeah. I did like how they reflected that in the acting, because sometimes, actors sometimes when they're acting, they just can't hit that emotional beat that they need to, or like they can't get to that level, what they need to get that performance out of them. And then sometimes it just takes that one story or that one moment in their life. They're like, okay, yes, this is what is going to help me get to that moment that I need to portray on screen.
Yeah.
Also very realistic when it comes to acting. I like that too.
Yeah. And he says, it never crossed my mind how quitting in the movie would affect anyone else. Uh, so, I mean, and I could kind of understand that. Like, he didn't know that she was turning down this big thing. He didn't know that. So, but also, I think you just get sometimes caught up in the moment and you make mistakes.
Yeah. And again, it shows that, yes, she's so new into his life that he's at that point in his life, he's not thinking about her yet. He's still thinking about himself and his career. Yeah. That's all he's known. And that is the thing with production too, because you see a lot of actors, leading actors who are still doing television, and you're still, or movies, and you're wondering, why are you still doing this after all these years? And then we see interviews, they're like, well, this isn't my job, this is other people's jobs too. This is how they bring the food to the table at their home. So it's not just like the simple decision of me quitting. It's like it's affecting everyone else. But because
that's true,
wasn't in production yet, he wasn't thinking of how many people it could affect.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you think of something like Heartland, for instance, to show that's now on season 16, like it would be easy for Amber Marshall to just, I'm tired of this, I'm bored of it, I don't want to do it anymore. But literally, there's like hundreds of people that would be out of jobs if she decided to do that. And maybe someday she will. She's perfectly happy doing it. But it's more than just about her. It's literally like
everybody,
hundreds of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just Heartland. It's so many movies, so many television shows. SVU is still going, stuff like that. It's when people get so, again, not stuck, but it's like that is their main job now. So it affects a lot of people.
Yeah. So then I think she's talking to her mom, I think, when she says, in the movie version, I get the guy and the gig. And then he told me I was born to work in the movies. And then she says, I thought maybe he was right, and that I'd found something I was good at, somewhere I belong. And I think that is one interesting thing about working in the arts, in my experience, is that you kind of sometimes stumble upon things. And you're like, wow, I didn't even know that I had that in me, or had that, or like for me, I definitely, I feel like I kind of stumbled upon doing interviews, and that wasn't something that I thought that I was good at, or that I don't know. But it, like, the opportunity presented itself, and so I went for it. And I've had a number of people tell me, like, you're a really good interviewer. You're good at helping people feel comfortable, and I don't know. So that's just been one of those things that's like, oh, I didn't even know that I had that in me, and it seems like people are enjoying it. So I guess maybe I do. And so I can understand her feelings with this. That, like, I found this thing that I thought that maybe I was good at, and I didn't even know, and then now it's been just taken away from me so soon.
Right. And like, first of all, good for you. Yeah. And like, and I completely get that, because that's her self-confidence was taken away from her so early in her career that she didn't think about other avenues that she could use her fashion for,
Yeah,
like
that's
movie
true.
making, like production. I was like, me, I completely understand too, because my career is for film, but somehow I got into podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the foundations and principles are the same, but like there are so many avenues that you can think of if you just open your eyes a little bit and be
Yeah.
open to different creative opportunities that can still lead you to something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love that. And sometimes it takes someone else to open their eyes, be like, you could do this too. Just
Mm-hmm.
believe in yourself, because I can see you doing film, even though that wasn't your first, thing that you were thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a uh, freelance, whatever you're doing, whether it's acting or in my case, podcasting, film critic, you kind of have to always just be ready for the next gig, the next opportunity. Because as soon as you get comfortable, then things change.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like I work so hard to get like a particular sponsor or a particular thing, and I'm like, oh, it's done. And then it changes. Then
Something
you just have to
happened.
keep going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that quote? Comfort is the enemy of progress.
Yeah. Only nothing is sure in life as change. And that's
Yep.
definitely true for a freelancer. But they end up finishing the movie, and you see that Jill and Caleb, they made the best movie yet. And now they've made up, and they've apologized to each other. Everybody.
Yep.
And they should have apologized to Jamie.
Yeah,
They
a little
should give
bit.
that woman like a Caribbean cruise or something.
Or more than that, just like give her a better position, make her a
Yeah,
producer or something. Goodness.
for what she dealt with.
Because there's some poor PAs. I feel that I've been there. I've had doors slammed on my face and stuff because you get in the middle of people. I I felt for her so much. I was like, oh girl, I want to give you a hug and a coffee and a promotion.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
some people do,
for real.
they have earned it.
And so then we have the announcement of My Favorite Santa 2, starring Mariah as the first female Santa Claus. And I mean, so I guess it's not Mrs. Claus. This is just like regular Santa
Mhm.
Claus. And
I would totally watch it.
yeah,
Leading
oh yeah,
ladies,
no
I'm there.
question. I'm there. We find out that he did do Ryan's game. So you're like, ooh, what happened? Because Caleb offers for Carrie to come to LA and work there.
Mhm.
I mean, the only thing that doesn't really jive with that is they actually don't really make very many Christmas movies in LA. They make almost all of them in Vancouver
Vancouver.
or Toronto.
Yep.
Or Utah, a few in Utah. Not very many. I mean, because it's really warm in
Yeah.
California.
It's kind of warm out here. It's kind of sunny. Kind of
Yeah.
doesn't look like winter. But I do
So
understand the opportunity of, because sometimes that's all it takes. It takes that one production or that one connection. Be like,
yeah,
yeah, you stick with me and we'll go far. Like we will keep consistently making stuff, and they seemed genuine. Like, no, we really like you. We're gonna, and that's the thing about production. Is it's like you find your loyal people that you're working with, and you will keep working.
yeah,
So the
that's
opportunity
true.
to go out to LA and keep working with the same people, yeah, that's very realistic.
hmm Yeah, that's true. And then we get the whole after party scene. So they've had this premiere. We get the after party scene. She's killing it in LA, doing an amazing job, working on My Favorite Santa too. And he comes up to her and he's just like, I'm so sorry for everything. And I'm just so glad you're doing well. And so then he's walking away. And then she says, oh, I'm gonna go home. Turns around, he's right there, and he's like, I left you once before, and I'm not leaving you
Not
again.
knowing again. That felt a little parent trap to me, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
And yeah, and I loved like the immediacy. It was like, no, you're in the exact same room that I need you to be. I have to say all this right now because
Yeah.
the credits are going to be rolling in 2 minutes, and I got to say my apology now.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So then they have the kiss, and they're all like, everyone's looking at us, and it was super fun. and they go outside and they have another kiss outside, and then she winks at the camera.
Yep.
What do you think that was saying? What do you think she was saying there with that wink?
Uh, I'm not sure if she was saying anything, but if you just think about the overall message of what her character says, like in the end, I get the guy and the gig,
Yes.
and then like she did at the end, and then I loved how his signature move is now became hers.
Yes.
And although it did feel out of character because then that actually took me out of the movie. Like, because I wasn't expecting that. Although I should have, because we saw him wink twice, and then we should have known that she was going to wink. So they got me.
Yeah, it was fun. So overall, I think this was a very enjoyable movie. It's one I can imagine watching a bunch of times and just laughing and having a good time with it. So what would you give this movie 1 to 5 crowns?
Yeah, I would say a solid 4. Solid, yeah, solid 4 because I love just the filmmaking. I loved. I eventually had to love Brad because he had room to grow on me. But he eventually got there. I mean, Kimberly Suss's dad. I'd give her 10 stars every
She's
single
so
time.
good.
She's just fantastic. No matter whatever movie she's in, I'm there. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna love her. So overall, I enjoyed it. I think I would still have to put Christmas in Homestead above this one. You know, the movie about filmmaking about that. That's seriously still one of my favorite Hallmark Christmas movies ever. And I still had to put that one above this one, but I thoroughly did enjoy this one.
Maybe I should rewatch that one. I remember enjoying it. That one's not quite as laugh out loud funny. It's not as outright a satire, but it is a really strong one. I enjoy that one very much.
I think that movie had a good balance of making a film, but also enjoying just the spirit of the town. And it's and then the relationship blossoming slowly throughout. But because it wasn't just all about the movie, it was them respecting the town and the people in it. So I love that movie. I watch it every year.
That's a good one. I'm gonna actually be pretty generous on this. I'm going to give it a 4.50 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. I think they could have maybe even leaned into the comedy even more. Like I was saying, like you could have had them all it had been in filming in summer and some of the stuff like that. But I still laughed quite a bit, and I loved the casting, and I loved Jill and Caleb. They were hilarious to me, and Jamie, that was really funny. And Laura Solstice was great. So it just had a lot of elements that I really enjoyed. So that's what I will give it. But let us know if you're listening what you would give this movie, what you think of it. And like I said, we have the interview with John Brotherton. We have the interview with Gary Goldstein, the writer. So definitely want to check out all of those. And Marissa, where can people follow you?
Everyone can follow me at Serafini TV.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please, 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 please leave us your ratings and reviews. It helps people find the podcast and it really helps us a lot. And also check out the Patreon group. That's the biggest way you can help us. And we have lots of cool perks for supporting us on the Patreon. And we also have the merch store, which has tons of fun designs for the holidays. So please take a look at that. And thanks again, Marissa. This was super fun. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye. Merry Christmas.